Good morning, everyone. Thank you to Vitamin Angels and all the organizers of this partner conference. And it is our pleasure as PBSP, Philippine Business for Social Progress, and Zero Extreme Poverty Philippines 2030 to be part of this session. For the next few minutes, I'll take you through what ZEP Philippines 2030 is all about, and more importantly, how your organizations could become a part of this movement. So ZEP 2030 began in 2015 when several non-government organizations and entities in the country banded together to see how all of us can contribute to the attainment of our Sustainable Development Goals 2030 commitment, particularly that of eradicating extreme poverty. So since 2015, this movement has envisioned having Filipinos that enjoy the fullness of life in sustainable communities. And specifically, it moves to uplift 1 million families from extreme poverty to self-sufficiency by 2030. Now, the roadmap of ZEP 2030 follows three phases. The first phase, from 2016 up to 2024, is survival. This means we first account for where these extremely poor Filipinos and families are. And then address and then take into account what their needs are, and then provide interventions, assistance, support, so that they could, at the very least, survive their very difficult predicaments. Unfortunately, given the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and then the resulting economic downturn or recession, we do understand that a lot more Filipinos and their families are experiencing significant social and economic pain. And this pandemic, obviously not something we saw beforehand in 2015, could set us back, not just for ZEP 2030, but all of our organizations. Phase 2, after survival mode, which we will try or we will act to move these families and extremely poor Filipinos into subsistence. So giving them the means to be productive, giving them the means to be more independent and to be able to live more meaningful and productive lives for themselves and their loved ones. And then the final phase, phase 3, from 2028 to 2030 is self-sufficiency. So making sure that these Filipinos are out of poverty, not just extreme poverty, and that they have productive livelihoods, that they earn for themselves, their kids go to school, they have good health outcomes, and they're able to thrive as members of our communities. So overall, we're looking at 1 million Filipino families or 5 million individuals. And that cuts across 70 provinces, all 17 regions of the country, and 500 municipalities or cities. Now, ZEP 2030 was initially clustered into 7 thematic areas or clusters. So you would see on your left, these clusters range from education, health, livelihood, environment, agriculture and fisheries, housing and shelter, and then having social justice as a cross-cutting cluster or thematic focus for the entire movement. Now, all of these clusters or themes align with the 17 SDGs. So this was how we were organized for the first 4.5 years or 4 years of ZEP 2030. Later on, I'll show you how this movement has adapted the last few years, even before the pandemic and the recession struck us in 2020. Now, the essential elements of ZEP 2030 are fourfold. The first one is we aim to strengthen large-scale collaboration through collective impact. Some of you might be familiar with the collective impact or CI framework. So when we say CI framework, this involves different groups, different individuals coming together to achieve a common agenda, having shared measurements, having continuous communication, doing mutually reinforcing action, and then having backbone support to carry out the agenda of the movement or of the coalition. And as a feature or an element, the second one is ZEP focuses on extremely poor families. So not just the poor, but those at the bottom rung of that socio-economic group. So focusing on the most marginalized and those in greatest need. And then third, we would like to start with the needs and aspirations of the families and their communities. So this means we have to listen to them and we have to include them not just in the interventions, but even in the design. So looking at them not just as beneficiaries, but as part of the process so that they in turn become self-sufficient after our actions are completed. And lastly, we integrate the SDGs into the development agenda of ZEP 2030. Now, some of you might ask, how do we define someone who is extremely poor? So after several months of refining this, these are the 5 indicators of extreme poverty. And you guys can use this for your own efforts. The first one talks about average daily income of family of 5 of less than 306. So that is equivalent to 61 pesos per person per day. And these are based on 2015 data. The second indicator is family members between 5 to 18 years old are currently not attending school due to poverty. So there might be different reasons why members of the family are not able to attend school. But what we are looking for are those who are unable to attend school because they are too poor to do so. And then the third one is looking at all family members have missed 2 suppers in a given week. Some of you might ask why supper. So based on feedback from our NGO partners, what they say is people would remember more if you ask them about supper. So if you ask breakfast, even a cup of coffee might be considered breakfast. Not a good indicator for whether they're getting their daily sustenance. For lunch, they might also not remember it as accurately. But if you ask them about supper or dinner or hapunan, that's what they will remember more often than not. The fourth indicator is family has no access to safe potable water. So here, we say a safe potable water source is at least level 1. So it's a communal or a point source, but with no distribution system. So outside of that, they are considered to not have any access to safe potable water. And fifth and last indicator would be the family has no access to own sanitary toilet. And this follows the definition of the government in terms of having a sanitary toilet. So overall, since 2015, ZEP 2030 has grown into 140 member organizations scattered across 52 provinces and 409 cities or municipalities. We say that a ZEP area or province or municipality is a ZEP area if a member organization of ZEP agrees to adopt the framework, the strategies, the aspirations of ZEP 2030 into its specific area. So there are organizations scattered across the country who have pledged to contribute to our vision and mission by identifying specific sites where they would like to operate and contribute to the agenda. Now, for the past 2 years, since 2019, we have shifted from thematic clusters into what we refer to as local convergences. So this is looking at, instead of thematic focus, looking at geographic focus and how we could target and address extreme poverty in those areas holistically. So there are 5 current sites for the local convergences. We have Quezon City for NCR, we have Cebu, we have Marawi City for BARM, we also have Bohol and Davao. So those are the 5 areas that we have for where local convergences have been established. There are 4 other provinces or areas where local convergences are being started. So this includes Palawan, Eastern Samar, Bukidnon, and Sarangani. Again, led by ZEP 2030 partner organizations or member organizations. These are pictures from some of the interventions that ZEP 2030, whether as an entire coalition or as specific members or collaborations between members, have acted in the last few years. So we have projects on water, on livelihood, on environment, on health, on education assistance, and shelter, and in other areas. Again, the point of ZEP 2030 is not just about individual, but mutually reinforcing actions. So organization A, for example, could take care of health. Another organization in the same area could take care of education. Another organization could take care of livelihood. Another organization could take care of governance. And that's how we're able to achieve more by working together rather than by doing piecemeal programs or activities or interventions. Now, given what has happened to us, to the country, with the pandemic since 2020, typically what we do as a coalition is we use a poverty probability index or PPI to measure and to define whether a certain Filipino or their family will be considered extremely poor or not. But with what happened in the pandemic, we're unable to do it as much as we would like in the past 12, 13 months. So what ZEP 2030 did in partnership with UNDP Philippines, last year we launched our COVID-19 Pulse, which is an online survey that we carry out through Facebook Messenger. So it's free to answer for everyone for as long as they have a smartphone and the Messenger app installed. And this allows us to do periodic checks of our respondents to see how the pandemic and the recession have affected their status or their poverty standing. So we use this to understand whether there are gaps, there are needs that we have to immediately address, and use those inputs as basis for some of our prioritization and decision making. So these are some of the things that we have asked or we have checked with them through the COVID Pulse survey. So we asked them about their families, we looked at their income and how things have changed for them. We've also looked at their status in terms of nutrition and how if they're able to still eat properly. We also look at how their communities are overall coping with the pandemic and all the difficulties associated with it. We are also currently conducting, or we have conducted, top line surveys to look at the needs and aspirations and gaps in specific communities and provinces. So what you have here in front of you are some of the top line results for 7 provinces or areas ranging from Nueva Ecija, Metro Manila, Bohol, Eastern Samar, Sarangani, Bukidnon, and Sorsogon. You would see that the top results are unsurprisingly include the top aspirations are good livelihood and having enough quality food and basic needs, and then quality education for children. We do know the disruption given the lack of face-to-face classes nationwide. And then another area or opportunity interest for us is having many opportunities for employment and business. So these are some of the areas or some of the initial results that we got. The results came in last month, and once they are available, we will be releasing this to the public, including for NGOs who would like to make use of that data for their own projects and programs. Now, so how can you join and be part of ZEP 2030? Number one, you can join an area convergence. So the 5 areas I mentioned earlier, the 4 upcoming areas, or if you even want to establish your own area convergence, that's also okay. We look forward to hearing from you if there are specific provinces, cities, or municipalities which you would like to adopt and to lead as part of our local convergence strategy. You can also offer appropriate programs as contributions to ZEP 2030 in the defined areas. Your organization may also volunteer as a local convener or partner to facilitate convergence at either a provincial or municipal or city level. And then you can link ZEP 2030 to other potential partners or donors within your respective networks or spheres of influence. So if you have more questions or if you would like to work with us with PBSP for ZEP 2030, you may email us at zeroextremepoverty2030 at gmail.com. We're also available at on Facebook with our Facebook page. That's fb.com/zero extreme poverty 2030. Or just look for Zero Extreme Poverty 2030. We're the top results, so you will easily find us online. Again, thank you to all of you for listening. I look forward to your questions and hopefully partnership on ZEP 2030. There's a lot of things we need to do to help our country and our marginalized communities recover and empower them to be more self-reliant by 2030. And we look forward to your goodwill, to your support, and to your enduring commitment. Muli po, maraming salamat at magandang umaga.